Welcome to the latest edition of Spotlight on in Fusion 5's The Bottom Line. This week, we are going to be focusing on managed services. With me, I have Kris Jackson, our General Manager of Enterprise Cloud and Security, who also manages our Outsource IT Managed Services division. Welcome, Kris.
Thanks very much, Trudy. It's great to be here.
Thank you. As always, I'm Trudy. I'm the General Manager of Marketing here at Fusion 5, and we're going to put the spotlight on managed services. So Kris, managed services, it's a pretty wide category. Exactly which managed services does Fusion 5 actually provide?
Yeah, it is an extremely wide category, and it's a common confusion when going to an outsourced provider like Fusion 5, where sometimes it can be categorized with business applications. So a client looking to get help with their CRM system or their ERP system. But it can also mean that they're looking to get help with, say, their IT services, which is generally around cybersecurity. It could be to do with, I need help for my staff to call someone when they've got an issue with their computer. But it can also be around, we've got a whole lot of infrastructure that we need some support with, and therefore we're looking for a managed services provider to step in and take control of that. So there is quite a large magnitude of different services under that umbrella, and different providers do different things. So there can also be a reactive type service that's provided, but also all the way through to a fully managed environment that a provider can look after.
Wow. And does Fusion 5 do all of that?
Yes, we do. So, I mean, we've been providing managed services now for actually quite a long time. And, we are well known for our business applications and the support services that we provide in that space. But behind the scenes, there's been quite a large capability that's been built over a number of years where we focus more on the outsourced IT division. So if we want to take on that ownership of a client's infrastructure or their security or their end user support, that's something that we have all the capabilities to deliver.
Great. So Fusion 5 recently acquired a leading managed services provider, Vigilant.IT. What was the thinking behind that move?
Yeah, good question. So we were looking to expand our footprint in Australia and really take what we've built from a managed services perspective within the business to another level. And to do that, we identified that we wanted to acquire a really well-known business that sort of focuses and specializes in that space, and then bring that capability into the business and then enhance and expand our existing offerings. So what that meant is that we brought in new capabilities around outsourced IT help desk. So we could bring in end user support capabilities and basically be there to support the front line within our client base, which was something that Fusion 5 wasn't doing previously. But we also wanted to be moving away from Fusion 5 just being seen as a business applications provider and really expanding those capabilities to be a full IT provider to our clients. So there was a lot of excitement from my side with the news of securing Vigilant.IT, and they've been an absolutely amazing team to join the business and have really shaped us and set us up for success going forward.
That's fantastic. What are the benefits that our managed services customers are receiving? So when you talk about managed services, you're ultimately saying they pay us to do something that they would otherwise have to employ someone to do. So they're outsourcing that to us to take care of it. But what are the real benefits to them of doing that?
Yeah. So there's probably three different areas that I think of when considering what the real benefits are. And so the first one's definitely reducing the overall internal risk, because right now technology is expanding and evolving on a daily basis, and to maintain and keep your staff upskilled and across all the different specializations that they need to be successful, it's actually extremely difficult. And if the business is moving really, really fast in terms of scaling or adopting technology, then there's clearly a need to be able to support that within your own IT team, which then can be risky because you need to build out a full capability. You need to also then provide that support potentially 24/7, cover holidays, weekends, all of that sort of thing, which is quite a challenge for a lot of businesses. So there's a huge amount of benefit in reducing that overall risk by leaning on a managed services provider like Fusion 5. The other thing is that comes up is the overall internal cost for IT. So a lot of organizations are going through a lot of pressure at the moment around their budgets and what they can actually afford to invest in. And most businesses want to invest in the areas that are driving their business, and generally it's not an IT function that's driving their business. So reducing that overall internal spend is quite important, but also then forecasting for the future. So once you've built that relationship with a managed services provider like Fusion 5, then it's really easy to understand potentially what that future cost is going to look like to maintain that level of service. And at the end of the day, there is going to be opportunity there to potentially reduce the internal staff that you need, or redistribute those type of resources to be focused on better areas of your business. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is really around the maturing of your organization's technology adoption. So one of the key things you can get from accessing a MSP is then you've got access to that knowledge, and most of our staff are working across a magnitude of different environments, and therefore you can lean on those skills to adopt technology a lot faster within the business and do it with a sense of comfort that that they've done it many times before, and they're looking at what's working and what's not working within different environments. So generally it will speed up the adoption of technology and help you grow as a business.
Right. So to recap, the benefits of investing in managed services for your business are a reduction of risk, potential cost savings, and
Yep.
redistribution of valuable employees who can now work on things that drive the business forward rather than just keep it upright.
Yes.
And then finally, maturing your adoption of technology and use of technology to make your business go faster, do better, be more profitable, ultimately evolve and innovate.
Exactly, and the good thing about it is when you're working, daily within an environment that's supported from an MSP, then you get, the relationship is strong. You know the business well, from Fusion 5 standpoint, and therefore providing a roadmap to improve and providing suggestions. It's really easy for us to come in and do that, and we can either set up a monthly cadence or a quarterly cadence where we come in to do more of that strategic type conversation, but we can learn and reflect on what's happening operationally with the general day-to-day support that we're providing.
Sounds to me, in simple terms, a real load off mentally, from a business owner or a business manager's perspective, is just knowing you can hand off some of that keeping the lights on business to people who can do it with high expertise, highly efficiently, and will basically take the reins.
Absolutely. That's the whole point of accessing an MSP, is to lean on those skills and to feel that you can actually maintain the business operations without too much interference or downtime.
Okay, so leaning into this idea of outsource IT, to many that might sound like you can just wrap up everything that you don't want to deal with and hand it to somebody else. In this case, your team at Fusion 5. But is that really the case? Is it truly not my problem, hand it over, or is there a spectrum of collaboration that businesses can engage in? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So there's three different tiers that we generally try to have a conversation with clients around. So at the lower end of the spectrum is, hey, we want to be able to get access to your resources, maybe do some ad hoc related support or some reactive support, when and as needed. And then the second tier is a co-managed environment. So the business retains responsibility for a number of functions around IT, but they want to outsource particular things. So we're working hand in hand with the IT department or with the business to be able to provide that successfully. So you can sort of see us as an extension of your IT team, all the way through to what we call a fully managed outsourced environment where Fusion 5 takes full responsibility. So that is very similar to what you were saying, where we sort of box everything up and go under these SLAs and with this cost to be able to provide extensive coverage within the organization. So that's something that we provide to a lot of our customers that are looking to not expand their internal IT department at all and look at outsourcing that fully.
Amazing. So it really isn't a case of one size fits all. There really is flexibility to suit whatever the need is.
Absolutely. And if we look at our existing client base, there is just a huge number of variations through that, but we try to tailor them towards one of those three different support offerings, and that just to make it as consistent as possible. But every organization is different. There's different investment within internal capabilities, and therefore we want to be able to open up and expand all the different options for the client to be able to leverage our skill set. And that can be, a very low investment in terms of outsourcing through to that full outsourcing model.
Fantastic. So businesses might be just muddling along and doing their very best and not really realizing that there was an opportunity to be better. What could you advise the customers to keep a lookout for, businesses to keep a lookout for, that would be a sign or an indicator that investing in outsourced IT managed services could be a good idea for their business?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that come to mind. So, if you're seeing a lot of downtime with your IT environments, then that's usually a sign that potentially the support is under-resourced. It could be the fact that there is a skill set gap. There could also be some issues around just general availability or maturity of that technology. So, if you're seeing a lot of outages or potentially a long duration for getting systems back online, then that's usually a sign that there needs to be a bit of a review about how we're providing those services. The other thing is, you could be getting pressure internally around the spend. So, looking at, do we look to build out that capability internally and hire a whole bunch of people that we then need to have coverage and full availability to do so, or do we look at that, bringing someone else in to provide that expertise? And one of the other signs is that there can sometimes be a huge focus around what IT is doing and how that supports the business operations. And that focus can sort of sometimes distract away from what the business is there to deliver. And so servicing customers and providing products and value, etc., you don't want to be focused heavily on what's happening within just keeping the lights on within the business and keeping the staff happy and available. So if there's a lot of issues around the satisfaction internally around IT, then it's usually a bit of a sign that you probably want to look at leaning in on a managed services provider like Fusion 5.
So we're talking about skills gaps, we're talking about downtime, we're talking about needing to increase resource, which of course increases costs to a business. If we think about the people who are actually involved in those conversations, who's likely to be feeling that pain, who's getting yelled at, but then who's also responsible for resolving that pain, making decisions about how to fix it? What do those relationships typically look like inside of a business?
Yeah. So generally everything goes to an IT manager function within the business. So they usually get all the direct feedback from the wider business. They usually get involved in any of the outages or any of the complaints as well. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're fully responsible for that, because they may have a limited resource group and budget that they can work with. They may have other external factors that could be impacting their ability to service different parts of the business. And so the IT manager generally would feel a lot of that pain and feedback. And they're usually looking at clever ways to be able to support the business with perhaps limited resources or maybe dated software and technology. And sometimes even with the IT manager role, they are trying to manage an application that's critical to the business that is so old that it's causing all this pain, but they can't actually do anything because the organization is not ready to spend quite a lot of money to replace that. And so they can sort of be the ones that are trying to keep the lights on, but it can be very difficult. So the relationship between the IT manager and, say, a CIO function within the business is critical. And at the end of the day, the CIO is there to provide that overarching strategy and support the resourcing availability, but also the spend. And so if the IT manager is working closely with them, they should be able to identify where there are these pain points and where there are these gaps, and then look at ways to either mitigate those risks or bring some other party involved to help support that function. So that relationship is really important. And it's not always, the IT managers or the IT team's fault that there is a problem, because technology is complex, and there's also business operations that are embedded into the organization that require a huge amount of organizational change that just won't happen in a short period, but sometimes it's just seen as an IT issue.
Okay, so sounds like IT wear the pain a lot of the time, but getting that fixed is a shared conversation, often with the CIO, probably bringing in the CFO because
Correct.
they've got the
Yeah.
budget, and convincing
Exactly.
the business how they need to evolve to stop that noise from happening that's ultimately holding people up from productivity.
Yeah, and that's one of the key things that we try to do when we step into a new organization and as part of a managed service is to go, okay, so you've spent majority of your time with your team just keeping the lights on, break fix, firefighting. If we take some of that pain away, what then can you actually look at maturing yourselves? Because you obviously have a very good understanding of the current environment and what's been happening in the business operations front. So a lot of the first engagements we do with organizations is taking away that firefighting so that those internal resources can be providing more value and potentially mature things that haven't been looked at for a long time. And that's usually where a lot of that noise comes from.
Okay. Tell me, are there any common misconceptions about investing in managed services that you'd like to clear up?
There's probably a few. So one of the key things is, and especially when you talk to an IT manager or an IT team, is, oh, we're going to lose all the access that we have. How are we going to support our business? So there's a bit of an angst or a concern about what does it mean that a managed services provider is going to step in and a whole bunch of other people are going to come in to support their business. And so what we touched on before was that we don't have to be that full take over, take full control, and do the fully outsourced model. We can work in a co-managed environment with the team. We can have the access levels that we need to deliver the functions that we're responsible for, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to then shut it all down and become, a closed off environment where they don't have the ability to do anything anymore. And we try to open up a really collaborative operational relationship with our clients so that they have the ability to step in as well, and so do we. And that's where we come back to that, being the extension of their IT team rather than just taking over the environment. The other thing is that sort of gets brought up quite a bit is, we're here to replace your IT department, and really that's a business decision if they are looking to downsize the investment. But pretty much most of the time, we are in there to complement the skills within the organization, and then you can lean on us when you're down with your resources or looking to step into a new area, or even just responding to some of the cyber risks that are in the environment, which is it's an ongoing battle. And so it's not always the case that an IT department is going to be replaced. It's really about extending our skills into the environment and working in that collaboration. And then just finally, there is a point there around MSPs costing us more, as a bit of a topic that pops up, and that's something where they've gone to an outsourced model. They potentially there could be a bit of confusion around what they've signed up for and at what cost, and therefore that there could be some providers out there that have models where they're charging per hour or charging a lot over the top of their base support model. So yeah, I recommend to anyone that's looking at leveraging a managed services provider that they work really closely with that provider and make sure that it's really clear about what we're taking on, and where the responsibilities will lie between the two organizations. And that's something that we focus really clear on. But there's time and time again proof shown that leveraging MSPs is really reducing the overall spend, and therefore reducing the cost of the business and the cost to I guess employing an IT department.
It's great. They sound like reasonable concerns, but easily explained away once you kind of pull back the veil and really start to
Yeah.
understand what it really is all about. So one final question for you, Kris. If there was one thing you wish people understood better about managed services and MSP, managed service providers, what would that be?
Yeah, okay. So the one thing that I think would be worth noting there is that, and perhaps there could be a perception from, I guess, legacy managed services in the past, is that what Fusion 5 does is we try to provide that collaboration and that co-managed sort of support. So we don't want our clients or potential clients to think that great, we've signed a contract and we've got some controls, and we have some SLAs that we're meeting, and then it becomes a them and us type conversation now put with a bit of paperwork. It's really about us being an extension of the team. We want to get to know their business. We want to work hand in hand. We want to have regular touch points around communication and feedback on both sides. And we lean heavily into the business to go and try and find issues that are reoccurring, and we want to make sure that we reduce that. So we don't want to be a provider that sits, on the outside. We want to be deeply ingrained in the business, and I think that's a critical thing. That potentially, if you look back 10 years ago, there's a lot of contracts out there that lock you into 3 years, and you can't do anything outside of what's included in that. But at the end of the day, it's a relationship, it's a partnership, and we want to make sure that the service is successful together.
Fantastic. Well, collaboration does seem to be the way forward in our new world, whether we do that digitally, in person, sitting next to somebody, or over a Teams conversation like this. Collaboration does certainly seem to be the way forward for strength, success, and making potential reality in people's businesses. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up there. This has been a spotlight on managed services from Fusion 5 as part of our The Bottom Line newsletter. We've had Kris Jackson with us, a General Manager of Enterprise Cloud and Security. I'm Trudy, GM of Marketing for Fusion 5, and we hope to see you for our next Spotlight On.
Awesome. Thanks, Trudy.